The universe had always looked down on humanity, weak, primitive, fragile. That's what the Galactic Council labeled them after Earth was discovered. Aliens passed by the blue planet, snickering at the so-called sentient apes who couldn't even escape their own gravity without risking their lives. The Council saw Earth as insignificant, not worth the effort to conquer or even acknowledge. That was until the Drakthar came. The Drakthar were ruthless conquerors, known across the galaxy as brutal warriors and cunning tacticians. Their fleet descended on Earth without warning, massive warships blotting out the sun, their engines rumbling like thunder. In a single day, major cities were reduced to smoking ruins. New York fell first, then Beijing, London, and Tokyo. It wasn't even a war, it was a slaughter. The Council watched from their luxurious stations, sipping exotic drinks and exchanging bored looks as they monitored the broadcasts. Earth's defenses were a joke. Primitive nukes, fighter jets, and soldiers armed with bullets. The Drakthar cut through them like they were nothing, leaving corpses and rubble in their wake. Aboard the flagship Blood Vengeance, Commander Krazul stood on the bridge, his crimson eyes fixed on the earth below. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he addressed his second-in-command. "Pathetic," he sneered. "These humans are barely worth the effort. We shall take their resources and leave their world a burning husk." His lieutenant grunted in agreement, but there was something gnawing at him. "Commander, some of the troops report resistance, pockets of humans fighting back. Nothing significant, but persistent." Krazul waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Let them fight. Their defiance is amusing, but it changes nothing." He didn't know it yet, but that persistence would become the Drakthar's downfall. In the shattered remains of Chicago, Sergeant Alex Reyes crawled through the wreckage of what used to be a hospital. His leg was bleeding, his armor scorched, but his grip on his rifle never wavered. Around him, the few survivors of his unit huddled together, eyes haunted but determined. "They hit Atlanta too," Corporal Darnell said, his voice tight with grief. "Whole place is gone. No word from the East Coast either." Alex forced himself to stay calm. "They think they've already won. That's why they're not bothering to wipe us all out. They're underestimating us." Private Chen wiped blood from his face and gave a bitter laugh. "They have ships the size of skyscrapers, Sarge. What the hell are we supposed to do?" "We hit them where it hurts," Alex said, his voice steely. "They're used to fighting organized armies. They don't know how to deal with guerrilla warfare. We go underground, regroup, and strike when they least expect it." It wasn't just empty talk. Across the globe, human resistance started to take shape. Leaders, soldiers, engineers, and civilians formed networks, passing intelligence, coordinating strikes, and learning the weaknesses of the Drakthar war machines. One critical discovery changed everything. The Drakthar's energy shields were vulnerable to specific radio frequencies, destabilizing them for precious seconds. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Humanity began to strike back. In Mumbai, an improvised rocket launcher took down a patrol ship. In Berlin, underground fighters lured Drakthar soldiers into a trap, collapsing buildings on top of them. The message was clear. Earth wasn't conquered yet. Commander Krazul, unaware of the growing resistance, lounged in his quarters, confident in his victory. He didn't notice the silent transmission that hacked into the ship's systems, planting a virus that would soon turn their own navigation against them. Alex Reyes watched the explosion in the sky, the flagship suddenly veering off course and colliding with one of its own cruisers. The Drakthar on the ground panicked as their chain of command fell into chaos. Grim determination hardened Alex's gaze. "They struck first. Now it's our turn." The world burned, but from the ashes, humanity's spirit burned hotter. And this time, Earth wasn't going down without a fight. Commander Krazul's body slammed into the metal floor as the flagship shuddered violently. Sirens wailed, and the harsh red glow of emergency lights bathed the bridge in a bloody hue. He pulled himself to his feet, rage contorting his face. "What in the name of the Black Star just happened?" he roared. Lieutenant Varrock stumbled forward, gripping his bleeding shoulder. "Commander, the flagship's navigation systems have been compromised. We collided with the Iron Maw. Primary thrusters are offline." Krazul lashed out, claws raking across the console, sparks flying. "How? How did this happen?" Varrock hesitated. There was an unauthorized data stream from the planet's surface. Some kind of virus. It corrupted our flight path. Krazul snarled, his eyes blazing. "Humans! Those wretched vermin think they can fight back? Crush them! Deploy ground forces to every resistance hotspot and burn them to ash." Varrock hesitated again, fear crawling into his voice. "Commander, our communications are disrupted. Some kind of electromagnetic interference from the surface. We can't coordinate our forces." Krazul smashed his fist into Varrock's jaw, sending him sprawling. "Then fix it. I will not be humiliated by insects." Meanwhile, far below in the wreckage of Chicago, Alex Reyes couldn't help the triumphant grin spreading across his face. The makeshift transmitter they'd set up in the basement of a bombed-out library had done the trick. Chen gave a shaky thumbs up from behind the console, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It worked," Chen panted. "The virus hit their mainframe. They're scrambling up there." Darnell leaned against the wall, keeping his rifle ready. "You really think this'll be enough to turn the tide?" Alex took a breath, staring up at the sky where debris from the collision rained down like meteors. "It's a start. We've rattled them. Now we just have to hit them hard while they're disoriented." He turned to the makeshift map they'd laid out on a cracked table. Red marks indicated known enemy outposts and patrol routes. Their scattered resistance groups were still mostly isolated, but this was their chance to unify and strike. "All right," Alex said, his voice firm. "We move on the communication hubs, take them out, and we isolate the ground forces from their command. If they can't coordinate, they're vulnerable." Chen hesitated. "Sarge, what if they retaliate with full force? We're already spread thin." Alex met his gaze, determination etched in his face. "They struck first. Now it's time they learn what humanity does when backed into a corner. We don't break, we get even." Across the world, similar pockets of resistance were catching wind of the flagship's collision. It was a symbol of hope, a sign that the Drakthar weren't invincible. Leaders rallied their troops, and guerrilla strikes intensified. In Paris, a small band of survivors sabotaged a refueling station, sending alien fuel tanks into a fiery blaze. In Cairo, resistance fighters ambushed an armored patrol, using scavenged explosives to rip through Drakthar armor. The council, safe in their distant stations, began to murmur among themselves. How had the humans managed to cripple the Drakthar flagship? Reports filtered in. Small, sporadic victories, but victories nonetheless. They couldn't ignore it anymore. Humanity wasn't going down as easily as they'd expected. On board the Blood Vengeance, systems flickered as engineers tried to restore order. Krazul stalked through the corridors, fury burning through his veins. Every second they remained vulnerable invited more chaos. As he entered the war room, a tech officer approached cautiously. "Commander, we've intercepted human communications. They're coordinating attacks across multiple locations, targeting our communication hubs." A vicious smile twisted Krazul's mouth. "Foolish apes, let them come. Send our elites to fortify the hubs. We will make them regret their insolence." But the commander's arrogance would cost him dearly. Humanity wasn't playing by the rules anymore. Guerrilla fighters didn't march in straight lines or attack in predictable waves. They came from the shadows, hit hard, and vanished before the Drakthar could regroup. In New Delhi, a squad of resistance fighters hijacked a Drakthar walker, rigging it with explosives and sending it straight into an enemy barracks. In Sydney, snipers picked off patrols from rooftops, while engineers hacked into alien drones to redirect them into each other. Alex received reports of successes from around the globe, his hope growing. He knew it wasn't enough to just hold their ground. They needed to cripple the Drakthar entirely. "Chen," he called, "can you track where their main power relays are? If we can knock out their energy supply, we might just force them to retreat." Chen squinted at the monitors. "Give me a few hours, Sarge. If I can triangulate their power signatures, I might be able to pinpoint the central node." Darnell slapped Alex on the shoulder. "You're thinking of blowing up their power grid? Bold move, man." Alex just grinned, a fierce light in his eyes. If they thought taking Earth would be easy, they're about to get a nasty surprise. He knew the cost would be high, and not everyone would make it out alive. But Earth wasn't about to roll over and die. Humanity had been underestimated one too many times. Now, it was time for payback. Chen worked tirelessly at the console, fingers flying over the keys as he sifted through intercepted signals and scanned energy readings. Alex paced behind him, his mind spinning with 100 thoughts at once. They needed to move fast. The Drakthar would eventually re-establish control, and their chance would be gone. Finally, Chen straightened, wiping the grime from his face with a trembling hand. "Got it, Sarge. The main power relay is in what used to be Colorado Springs. They've set up a massive generator field, drawing power from underground geothermal vents. If we take it out, their ground forces will lose energy shields and weapons systems." Darnell let out a low whistle. "That's a long way from here. How are we supposed to get past their air patrols?" Alex didn't hesitate. "We call in every resistance group between here and Colorado. Create enough chaos to keep the skies distracted while we move in." Darnell gave a wry grin. "A suicide run, then?" "If it means breaking their stranglehold, it's worth it," Alex replied grimly. The plan was simple, but brutal. Strike hard, strike fast, and don't stop moving. Alex sent out encrypted messages to nearby cells, rallying them to hit Drakthar outposts along their route. Distractions and diversions were key. As the team geared up, Chen hesitated, his gaze flicking between the map and the weapons they'd scavenged. "You really think this'll work?" Alex's expression softened for just a moment. "I don't know. But doing nothing isn't an option. We've got to make them bleed." A few hours later, the resistance convoy moved through the war-torn streets. Battered vehicles loaded with improvised weapons and grim-faced fighters. Smoke still choked the air, but morale was high. Word had spread about the flagship collision, and hope was rekindling. The first skirmish happened near St. Louis, where a Drakthar patrol ambushed them from the rooftops. Plasma shots lit up the night, burning through steel and concrete. Alex dove behind a burnt-out truck, barking orders through his radio. "Chen, find me a sniper position. Darnell, lay down suppressing fire." Darnell popped up from cover, unloading bursts from his rifle, while Chen scrambled up the remains of an old fire escape. Within seconds, the crack of his shots echoed, and 2 Drakthar fell from the rooftops, their heavy bodies thudding to the ground. "Clear," Chen called down. They moved quickly, wasting no time celebrating. The convoy pressed on, weaving through broken highways and collapsed buildings. Resistance groups in Kansas and Nebraska launched hit-and-run attacks on nearby Drakthar camps, drawing attention away from the main team. By the time they hit the outskirts of Colorado Springs, dawn was just breaking, casting long shadows over the alien machinery that dominated the landscape. The geothermal relay stood like a metallic spider, its massive legs sunk deep into the earth, pulsating with an eerie blue glow. Guard patrols swarmed the area, alert and armed to the teeth. Alex scoped out the terrain from a ridge, sweat slicking his brow. That's it. We cut off the power there and we cripple their ground forces worldwide. Chen adjusted his binoculars. We've got about 36 hostiles on the perimeter, plus 2 armored walkers. We need a big enough bang to take the core offline. Darnell checked his gear. We've got the charges, but we'll need to get right up to the base of that thing. No way we're doing it quietly. Alex chewed his lip, formulating a plan. We hit them with a diversion, make them think we're attacking from the north. Once they shift, we slip in from the south and plant the charges. Darnell, you're on demolition. Chen, cover him. I'll coordinate the distraction. Setting up the diversion took every ounce of coordination they had left. Makeshift explosives rigged to abandoned cars and automated gun turrets crafted from scavenged parts gave the illusion of a full-scale assault. When the traps went off, alarms blared throughout the compound. Drakthar soldiers rushed north, converging on the explosions. Alex led Darnell and Chen through a side passage, ducking under pipelines and weaving between stacks of power cells. A lone Drakthar guard rounded a corner, but Chen silenced him with a single shot to the throat before he could raise an alarm. They crept closer, the hum of the power relay vibrating through the ground. Darnell knelt beside the core housing, planting charges with a precision that belied his rough exterior. Just a few more seconds, he muttered. The sound of approaching footsteps made Alex freeze. He motioned for Chen to cover him while he glanced around the corner. A patrol of 6 was moving back, alerted by the quiet. Hold your fire, Alex whispered. Darnell pressed the final charge into place and gave a thumbs up. Done. They ducked into cover just as the patrol rounded the corner, missing them by inches. Once the guards passed, Alex gave the signal to retreat. As they moved back toward the ridge, gunfire erupted to the north. Some of the resistance fighters had pushed closer, drawing the enemy's attention back. When they were at a safe distance, Alex nodded to Darnell. Do it! With a wicked grin, Darnell hit the detonator. The explosion was blinding. Blue energy arced wildly as the geothermal core went critical. The entire relay shuddered, then imploded, sending shockwaves through the ground. The Drakthar defenses flickered and died as power drained from their weapons and shield generators. Across the world, human fighters seized the opportunity. Alien walkers shut down mid-stride, plasma weapons powered off, and communication went dark. Guerrilla forces moved in, overwhelming the suddenly vulnerable invaders. On board the Blood Vengeance. Krazul's face twisted in horror as his tactical display lit up with red alerts. No, it can't be, he whispered. His arrogance had cost him. Humanity had struck back, harder and smarter than he'd ever imagined. Commander Krazul slammed his fist into the console, cracking the reinforced metal. His crimson eyes burned with fury, and his claws scraped harshly against the armrest of his command chair. The bridge was in chaos, reports flooding in from every battalion, all echoing the same devastating message. Power down, shields compromised, weapons offline, ground forces overrun. Varrock, nursing a broken arm from the earlier collision, approached cautiously. Commander, our planetary forces are in disarray. Without power relays, they're losing their primary defenses. Human resistance is overwhelming them. Krazul seized him by the throat, lifting the struggling lieutenant into the air. You incompetent worm! How could a species so primitive dismantle our systems? Varrock choked out a few words. They exploited our reliance on centralized power, guerrilla tactics, decentralized assaults. With a snarl, Krazul hurled him aside, sending him crashing into the bulkhead. The commander glared at the battle reports with pure hatred. How had it come to this? How had these weak, inferior creatures managed to cripple his forces. "We should have wiped them out from orbit," he muttered, fury boiling over. "Enough playing games. Initiate planetary bombardment protocols. Level their cities. No survivors." The bridge crew hesitated. A junior officer glanced up nervously. "Commander, our orbital cannons are still offline. Power conduits are damaged from the collision." Krazul's roar shook the entire bridge. "Then send reinforcements. Mobilize every last troop from the remaining ships. Crush them." But the Drakthar soldiers were in disarray on the ground. Deprived of their superior technology, they were vulnerable. Plasma rifles malfunctioned, armor shields flickered and died, and communication between units was all but severed. Humanity wasn't about to let the opportunity slip by. In Colorado Springs, as the dust settled from the massive explosion, Alex Reyes led his team back toward the convoy. His radio crackled to life, and he heard excited voices from resistance groups worldwide. "They're falling back. Drakthar forces surrendering in the streets. We've taken control of their barracks in Berlin." Alex shared a look with Darnell and Chen. Relief and triumph gleamed in their eyes, but Alex knew it wasn't over yet. The flagship was still intact, and as long as Krazul was alive, Earth remained in danger. He grabbed his radio. "All resistance units, this is Sergeant Reyes. We're making a push for the flagship. We take out their leader, and this invasion ends. Anyone who can move, regroup at the crash site in Chicago. We're taking the fight to them." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You're planning to board that monster?" Alex gave a grim nod. "We don't have a choice. We take out Krazul, or he'll keep sending waves of reinforcements. We can't hold out forever." Word spread like wildfire, and within hours, resistance forces from all over were converging on Chicago, where the blood vengeance remained grounded, struggling to repair itself. Makeshift artillery pounded its hull, keeping its defenses strained, while snipers picked off Drakthar soldiers who ventured too far from the ship. By the time Alex's convoy arrived, hundreds of fighters were already in position. He met with a few of the resistance leaders, grizzled veterans, former soldiers, and ordinary citizens turned warriors. "What's the plan?" asked Marta, a scarred leader from the Detroit cell. Alex mapped out the assault on the back of an old transport truck. "We hit them from 3 sides, force them to concentrate their fire, then our main squad breaches the hangar bay. We fight our way to the bridge and take down Krazul." Darnell cracked his knuckles. "Sounds suicidal. I like it." They moved into position, taking cover behind shattered buildings and piles of rubble. The signal flare shot into the sky, and the assault began. Resistance troops charged forward, pouring gunfire and explosives at the Drakthar troops guarding the entrance. Plasma shots returned fire, but the aliens were clearly struggling without their usual support. Alex led his squad through the chaos, weaving between cover and returning fire when needed. Darnell lobbed grenades into entrenched positions, blowing alien soldiers sky high. Chen picked off sharpshooters from the rear, keeping their path clear. As they neared the hangar, a monstrous Drakthar brute blocked the way, wielding a heavy plasma cannon. The creature roared, leveling its weapon at Alex's team. Before it could fire, a rocket slammed into its chest, detonating with a fiery burst. Marta emerged from a side alley, grinning wickedly. "Figured you could use a hand." Together they stormed the hangar, blasting through the few remaining guards. Inside, the ship's maintenance crew fled in terror as the humans seized control of the loading bay. Alex rallied his squad, pointing toward the central lift. "That elevator leads straight to the command deck," Chen noted, hacking the control panel. "But expect heavy resistance." Darnell snorted. Wouldn't be fun otherwise. They packed into the lift, nerves taut and weapons at the ready. As it ascended, Alex took a deep breath, focusing his mind on the mission. When the doors opened, they were met with a hail of plasma fire. Chen dropped instantly, a blast searing his shoulder. Alex and Darnell dragged him to cover, while Marta and the others returned fire. Across the bridge, Commander Krazul stood like a vengeful god, glaring down at them from his raised platform. His massive frame cast a shadow over his subordinates, and his voice was pure venom. "You insects dare challenge me on my own ship? I will grind your bones to dust." Alex raised his rifle, eyes locked on his enemy. "You struck first, Krazul, but humanity doesn't die easy. This is our home. You don't get to take it." The commander leapt down, claws gleaming, and the final battle began. Krazul landed with a thunderous crash, the deck plates shuddering beneath his immense weight. His eyes blazed with murderous intent as he drew a serrated blade from his hip, a weapon forged from dark alloys and etched with ancient Drakthar runes. Alex barely had time to shove Chen out of the way before Krazul lunged, slashing the blade in a brutal arc. Sparks flew as the blade sliced through a nearby console, sending shattered metal skittering across the deck. Darnell fired his rifle, the rounds pinging off Krazul's thick armor. Damn it, he's built like a tank! The commander spun with inhuman speed, backhanding Darnell and sending him sprawling. Marta let loose with her shotgun, aiming for the alien's exposed neck, but Krazul dodged and swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, gasping for air. Alex dropped to one knee, aiming his rifle at the creature's head. "Hey, over here!" Krazul snarled and charged. Alex squeezed the trigger, sending a burst of bullets into the alien's face, but the rounds barely grazed his armor. The commander swung his blade down, and Alex barely rolled aside, the weapon embedding itself in the metal floor. Chen, despite his injured shoulder, fired a well-placed shot that hit Krazul in the side of his head, cracking one of his breathing tubes. The commander snarled, grabbing the tube and yanking it free, spitting out thick, dark blood. "You think your pitiful resistance means anything?" Krazul growled, yanking his blade free. "I have conquered worlds beyond counting. You are nothing but insects beneath my heel." Alex rose to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. "You're just another tyrant who underestimated humanity. We don't go down easy." Before Krazul could react, Darnell pulled a flashbang from his belt and tossed it at the commander's feet. The explosion of light and sound sent Krazul staggering, blinded and furious. "Now!" Alex shouted. He and Marta rushed in, firing point-blank into the alien's exposed neck and torso. Krazul roared, swinging his blade wildly, but his balance was off, and his vision hadn't cleared. Marta aimed for the cracked breathing tube and fired, blowing out the rest of it. Krazul choked, struggling to breathe, his movements sluggish and desperate. Darnell circled around, pulling a combat knife from his belt. With one smooth motion, he leapt onto Krazul's back, driving the blade into the seam between the armor plates on his spine. Krazul howled, thrashing and trying to reach back, but Darnell held on, twisting the knife deeper. Alex saw his chance and sprinted forward, grabbing a fallen alien rifle from the floor. He aimed it at Krazul's head, finger trembling on the trigger. "This is for everyone you killed, for every city you burned, for Earth." He pulled the trigger, and a bolt of searing energy punched through Krazul's skull, right between his glowing red eyes. The commander shuddered, his massive frame swaying for a moment before collapsing to the floor with a deafening thud. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the crackle of damaged electronics and the ragged breathing of the resistance fighters. Darnell slid off the alien's back, panting and wiping blood from his hands. Marta looked at the motionless corpse, then at Alex. "Is it over?" Alex nodded slowly, still catching his breath. "Yeah, it's over." Chen leaned against a console, wincing at his injury. "Holy shit, we actually did it." Before they could process the victory, the ship's alarm systems kicked in, and a robotic voice boomed over the speakers. "Warning, Command authority compromised. Automatic distress beacon activated. Galactic Council response imminent. Alex shot a wary look at Chen. What the hell does that mean? Chen hacked into a nearby console, grimacing. The ship sent out a distress signal. The rest of the Drakthar fleet and the Council are gonna know their commander's dead. They might send reinforcements. Darnell scoffed. Let them come. We took down their biggest bully. We can handle whatever's next. But Alex wasn't so sure. We need to seize control of this ship. If we can disable that distress signal, we might have time to regroup before they show up. He glanced down at Krazul's corpse, and then to his team, exhausted but resolute. We've come too far to lose now. Let's secure the bridge and get that signal down. Earth's still ours, and we're not letting anyone take it from us. With a renewed sense of purpose, they moved to the central console and began deciphering the alien systems. As they worked, resistance leaders from the surface reported that the remaining Drakthar soldiers were surrendering or fleeing into the wilderness. Victory chants echoed across the broken cities. Humanity had struck back and claimed their world. But even as they secured the ship, Alex knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew what humanity was capable of, and they wouldn't sit idly by. Earth would have to be ready for whatever came next. As Alex stared out at the horizon from the bridge window, he couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. The Drakthar had struck first, but humanity's revenge had been inevitable, and they weren't done fighting yet. In the weeks that followed the death of Commander Krazul, Earth slowly emerged from the shadow of invasion. Cities lay in ruins, countless lives had been lost, and the scars of war marked every corner of the globe. Yet amidst the devastation, a fierce and unbreakable spirit rose, one that refused to bow to alien tyranny. The remaining Drakthar forces, leaderless and scattered, either surrendered or fled into the wilderness. Some tried to regroup, but without their power relays and centralized command, they were easy targets for the organized resistance. Humanity reclaimed their cities piece by piece, dragging the invaders out of hiding and ensuring they wouldn't pose a threat ever again. The blood vengeance became a symbol of victory and defiance. Engineers and scientists from around the world flocked to the massive warship, studying its technology and unlocking secrets that could change the future of human civilization. Reverse engineering the ship's systems proved challenging, but humanity was stubborn, driven by both vengeance and survival. Alex Reyes stood on the bridge, overlooking the cityscape of Chicago through the flagship's massive viewport. The cleanup efforts were already underway. Smoke still rose from distant fires, but people were returning, rebuilding, and reclaiming their lives. He glanced at the alien consoles that Chen and a few tech specialists were working on, still trying to decipher the distress signal protocols. Darnell entered the bridge, wiping sweat from his face. South perimeter's clear. We rounded up a few stragglers hiding in the sewers. No major threats left. Alex nodded, relieved. Good. Keep patrols active just in case. I don't want any surprises. Chen approached, looking both triumphant and exhausted. We did it, Sarge. We managed to disable the distress beacon. No more signals going out. Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Nice work, Chen. That'll buy us some time. Marta leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Think the council's gonna come knocking? Alex looked out at the horizon, the sun just beginning to set. They will. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but they'll come. We just killed one of their most feared commanders and took his ship. They can't ignore that. Darnell smirked. Let them come. We know how to fight now. We know how to hit back. Chen hesitated, his gaze serious. Yeah, but we can't just stay on the defensive forever. If the council sends an entire fleet, we're screwed. We barely survived one flagship. Alex nodded. That's why we're not just defending. We're preparing. We've got the ship, we've got their tech, and we've got our will to survive. If they want to bring the fight to us, we'll be ready. He looked at the remnants of Krazul's command armor, now stripped of its power and draped over a broken console, a symbol of the fallen tyrant and a reminder of humanity's victory. Over the following months, Earth transformed. Factories converted to build hybrid human-alien weapons, old alliances reforged, and nations that had once been rivals stood together, united by a common enemy. Skilled pilots and soldiers trained relentlessly, preparing to defend their world from whatever threat came next. The Council, shaken by the loss of Krazul and the unexpected resistance from humanity, deliberated cautiously. Some advocated for an all-out assault to crush Earth before it grew stronger. Others warned that such an action might spark a rebellion among other subjugated species, who would see humanity as a symbol of hope. For the first time in centuries, the mighty council was divided and uncertain. One day, as Alex surveyed the rebuilding efforts from the ship's bridge, a message crackled through the comm system. Chen adjusted the signal and widened his eyes. "It's a transmission from space," he said, barely able to contain his shock. "It's not Drakthar. It's from the council itself." Alex moved closer, his jaw set. "Put it through." The voice that filled the room was cold and measured, each word precise and weighted. "To the leaders of Earth, your defiance has been noted. Your resistance, though unexpected, will not go unanswered. Prepare yourselves. The Council does not forget, nor do we forgive rebellion. Surrender your world and submit to our authority, or face total annihilation." The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Darnell snorted, rolling his eyes. Typical alien bullshit. They still think we're scared of them. Alex smiled grimly. "They're coming. They're bringing their whole force. But we've got something they didn't expect, a reason to fight. We've bled for this world, and we're not about to let anyone take it from us." Marta glanced at the battle-scarred city below. "If they want a war, they're going to find out just how mean we can get." Chen smirked. "Humanity's revenge was inevitable, and they haven't seen anything yet." As the crew of the Blood Vengeance prepared for the battles yet to come, Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. The universe had thought Earth was weak, fragile, and primitive. But they had learned the hard way that humans didn't just survive. They fought back. And now, with fire in their hearts and vengeance on their minds, they would take the fight to the stars if that's what it took. Earth was ready. Let the galaxy come. Let the galaxy. The silence of space was shattered when the Vengeance, Earth's first fully armed interstellar battleship, emerged from the void. It wasn't sleek like the ships of the Galactic Council. It wasn't adorned with elegant curves or delicate energy sails. No, the Vengeance was a brutal, towering beast of steel and fury, a testament to humanity's raw will to survive. The moment its shadow stretched across the galaxy, the once powerful alien empires shuddered. They had underestimated humanity. They had assumed Earth was weak, that its people were too fractured, too primitive to be a threat. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had attacked. And humanity had responded. Admiral Elias Carter stood on the bridge, eyes locked onto the holographic display before him. His face was hardened by years of war, the deep lines on his forehead telling the story of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Around him, the officers of the Vengeance moved with precision, efficient, disciplined, ready. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Status report," Carter commanded. "All weapons primed, shields at full power," Lieutenant Hayes responded. Her voice was steady, But there was an unmistakable edge to it. Anticipation. And the enemy? The display zoomed in, revealing an armada of ships belonging to the Zalari Dominion, one of the most powerful factions in the known galaxy. They had ruled through fear, their fleets conquering weaker species with ruthless efficiency. Until now. "They're holding position," Hayes said. "Scans indicate heavy armament, but they're hesitating, sir." Carter allowed himself the ghost of a smirk. The mighty Zalari, hesitating before a single human warship. They had good reason. The Vengeance was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It didn't rely on delicate energy weapons or sophisticated shield harmonics. No, Earth had built something far simpler, something far deadlier. The Vengeance carried kinetic railguns the size of city blocks, capable of firing projectiles at near light speed. It was lined with layers of ablative armor that could withstand anything short of a direct supernova. And hidden deep within its hull was the true horror, a weapon so devastating that it had been classified as humanity's final option, a weapon that could crack a planet in half. The Zalari command ship hailed them. A shimmering image of Lord High Warden Arval appeared, his reptilian features twitching with barely concealed rage. "Human," Arval hissed. "You dare bring your war machine into our domain?" Carter stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. "I dare," he said simply. "You massacred one of our colonies. You thought we wouldn't retaliate." Arval's tongue flicked out in agitation. "That was a warning. Humanity was to know its place." Carter's expression darkened. "And this is our answer." There was a beat of silence. Then Arval laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You truly believe that one ship will stand against an empire?" Carter tilted his head slightly. "Your empire seems nervous." Arval's scales rippled, a sign of discomfort. He knew. They all knew. The Galactic Council had tried to keep it quiet, but rumors had spread. Whispers of a battle at the edge of the Orion Arm, where a single Earth destroyer had obliterated a Zalari fleet. They had underestimated humanity's war technology before. They wouldn't make that mistake again. "You don't belong in this galaxy, human," Arval snarled. "Leave now, and we will allow your species to exist, under our watchful eye." Carter leaned forward, his voice turning cold. "No." Then he gave the order. "Fire!" The first shot from the Vengeance tore through the void like a vengeful god's fist. A hyper-accelerated tungsten slug ripped through the lead Zalari battleship, shearing through shields and armor as if they were paper. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, and in that moment, the Zalari fleet realized the truth. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity wasn't afraid. Humanity had come to claim its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The moment the first Zalari battleship detonated, the battlefield erupted into chaos. The Zalari fleet, so accustomed to instilling fear in lesser species, suddenly found themselves facing a nightmare beyond their comprehension. Admiral Carter stood firm, his hands steady behind his back as he watched the battlefield unfold on the holographic display. The Zalari had numbers. Dozens of capital ships, supported by hundreds of fighters. But numbers didn't matter when their weapons barely scratched the armor of the Vengeance. "Enemy return fire incoming," Lieutenant Hayes reported, her fingers dancing across the console. "Brace for impact," Carter ordered, though he knew their ship could take it. The Zalari ships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, streaks of blue and violet lancing through the void. The shields of the Vengeance flared as they absorbed the onslaught, but they held strong. Unlike the delicate energy barriers used by the Galactic Council's ships, human shielding was layered, reinforced, and built for endurance. Even as the Zalari pounded them with firepower that could reduce other warships to scrap, The Vengeance refused to yield. Minimal shield degradation, Hayes confirmed. Hull integrity at 100%. Carter allowed himself a small nod. Good. Return fire, he said. The ship's massive railguns thundered again, launching another volley of hyper-accelerated slugs. The Zalari ships scrambled to evade, but it was too late. 2 more battleships were torn apart as the unstoppable projectiles turned them into fireballs. The surviving ships broke formation, confusion spreading among their ranks. "Sir," Commander Patel spoke up from the tactical station, "we're picking up multiple distress signals from the Zalari fleet. They're calling for reinforcements." Carter's eyes narrowed. Of course they were. The Zalari had grown complacent over centuries of dominance, but they weren't fools. They knew they couldn't face the Vengeance alone. The real battle was about to begin. "Time frame?" he asked. "Estimates suggest their nearest reinforcements are 30 minutes out. Then we have 30 minutes to teach them a lesson." The order was given, and the Vengeance surged forward, cutting through the Zalari fleet like a predator among prey. The Zalari flagship, Dominator's Wrath, was unlike the others. Larger, more heavily armored, and commanded directly by Lord High Warden Arval himself, it loomed at the center of the enemy formation. But even Arval now understood what he was facing. "Fall back!" he roared, his scaled hand slamming against the command console. "Reposition the fleet! We must regroup!" "But my lord," a Zalari officer stammered. "Do as I command!" Arval snapped, his eyes flaring with rage. He had heard the reports, dismissed the warnings. The humans were supposed to be primitive, nothing more than a backwater species clinging to their fragile world. And yet, here they were, carving through the finest warships in the Dominion's fleet, as if they were nothing more than space debris. The Vengeance was a weapon of war, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, and Arval knew, if they didn't stop it here, they never would. "Prepare the Annihilator cannons," he ordered. "If we are to fall, we will take these humans with us." Back aboard the Vengeance, Carter studied the tactical display. The Zalari were trying to regroup, forming a defensive line around their flagship. He almost admired their resilience. Almost. "Sir, the enemy flagship is charging a massive energy weapon," Hayes reported. "Estimated output? It's off the charts." Carter clenched his jaw. So the Zalari were done playing games. "Good. So are we. Deploy the Odin protocol," he said. The bridge fell silent. Even Hayes turned to look at him, eyes widening slightly. The Odin protocol was Earth's greatest military secret, something even the Galactic Council had only heard whispers about. It wasn't just a weapon. It was an extinction-level deterrent. But the Zalari had already shown humanity what they were capable of. They had slaughtered human colonies, massacred innocent civilians as a warning, and now they would see what it meant to provoke Earth. A moment later, deep within the bowels of the Vengeance, the Odin payload was armed. "Target the flagship," Carter ordered. "Fire." From the underbelly of the Vengeance, a single warhead detached, moving slowly at first, then accelerating at impossible speed. It wasn't a traditional missile, nor an energy weapon. It was something far worse. An experimental weapon powered by a miniature singularity. The Odin warhead struck the Dominator's Wrath dead center. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to twist as the singularity detonated, tearing through the enemy ship with a force that defied the laws of physics. The Dominator's Wrath didn't explode. It collapsed in on itself, pulled into a point of infinite gravity before vanishing entirely. One moment, it was the Zalari's pride and glory. The next, it was gone, erased from existence. The remaining Zalari ships panicked. Their flagship had been their rallying point, their symbol of strength. Now all that remained was fear. They're retreating, Hayes said, her voice quiet, almost in disbelief. Carter exhaled slowly. Let them go. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget. The battlefield had fallen into eerie silence. The Zalari fleet, once the mightiest force in this sector of the galaxy, was now shattered, its remnants scattering into the void like frightened insects. The Vengeance stood alone, surrounded by the wreckage of its enemies. On the bridge, Admiral Carter took a slow breath, his mind already calculating the next steps. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. The Zalari wouldn't forget this humiliation. They would be back, and next time, they would bring everything they had. Status report, Carter ordered. All systems nominal, Lieutenant Hayes responded, her fingers flying over her console. Shields at 89%, minor hull damage, nothing critical. Odin payload successful, 0 residual anomalies detected. Casualties? Minimal. A few minor injuries in engineering, but all crew accounted for. Carter nodded. Good. Damn good. The bridge crew remained silent for a moment, letting the weight of their victory settle. They had just done the impossible. They had faced down an empire and sent it running. But Carter knew better than to celebrate. War wasn't won in a single battle. Admiral, Commander Patel spoke up, eyes fixed on the long-range scanners. I'm picking up multiple incoming signatures, new contacts, not Zalari. Carter's jaw tightened. Identification? Patel worked quickly, then his face went pale. Sir, it's the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council. The so-called Keepers of Peace. A coalition of the most powerful alien species in the galaxy, dedicated to maintaining balance and ensuring that no one race became too dominant. They had ignored Earth for centuries, considering humanity too primitive to be worth their attention. Until now. Carter clenched his fists. They don't come when our colonies burn. They don't interfere when the Zalari slaughter our people. But the moment we fight back... How many ships? He asked. At least 20 capital-class vessels, Patel said grimly. They're holding position just outside the debris field. A moment later, a transmission request lit up the main display. Open the channel, Carter ordered. The image that appeared was of a creature Carter had encountered only once before, High Chancellor Veleth of the Galactic Council. Tall and elegant, with shimmering blue skin and piercing silver eyes, Veleth radiated the quiet authority of a being who had ruled for centuries. Admiral Elias Carter, Veleth said, his voice as smooth as flowing water. It seems humanity has made quite the statement today. Carter didn't move, didn't blink. We defended ourselves. Veleth tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. A single ship, annihilating a Zalari fleet? That is not mere defense. That is a declaration of power. Carter let the words hang in the air. He wasn't going to deny it. The Zalari murdered thousands of our people, he said finally. Where was the council then? Veleth sighed, as if Carter's words pained him. Politics is complicated. We do not involve ourselves in every conflict. There are rules, Admiral. Carter's expression darkened. Rules that allowed genocide? Veleth didn't answer. Carter leaned forward. You're not here to help us. You're here because humanity just changed the balance of power, and that terrifies you. Veleth's silver eyes flickered. We are here to ensure peace, Admiral. Carter gave a dry chuckle. By threatening us? Veleth's voice remained calm. By making sure humanity understands the consequences of its actions. The meaning was clear. This wasn't a friendly meeting. This was a warning. Carter straightened. Humanity has learned many things in the past few years, Chancellor. The most important? We stand alone and we survive." For the first time, Velith's expression faltered. Just a fraction. "Be careful, Admiral. Even the strongest species can fall." Carter met his gaze, unflinching. "So can the Council." The transmission cut off. Silence returned to the bridge. Hayes exhaled. "Sir, what now?" Carter stared at the holographic display, watching the Council's ships hold their position. "We go home," he said finally. "But make no mistake, this isn't over." Humanity had revealed its strength, and now the entire galaxy was watching. As the Vengeance turned away from the wreckage-strewn battlefield, the crew remained silent. There was no celebration, no cheers for their victory, only the cold realization that they had just painted a target on humanity's back. Admiral Carter sat in his command chair, eyes locked on the swirling void beyond the view screen. He knew the Galactic Council wouldn't attack them. Not yet. They would posture, they would threaten, but they wouldn't make the first move. Not when the Vengeance had just demonstrated its terrifying power. But the Zalari? The Zalari would be back. "Set course for Earth," Carter ordered. "Maximum burn." The engines roared to life, and the Vengeance surged forward, leaving behind the ruins of the Zalari fleet. But even as they moved away, Carter knew this was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the world was already in an uproar. The battle had been transmitted across the system, and though the full details were classified, the people of Earth knew one thing. Humanity had struck back. The fear that had lingered since the Zalari's first attack was gone, replaced by something far more powerful: defiance. In the towering halls of the United Earth government, debates raged. Politicians argued over what humanity's next move should be. Some called for diplomacy, for negotiations with the Council to avoid an all-out war. Others demanded retaliation, the complete annihilation of the Zalari before they could recover. And then there were the pragmatists, the ones who understood the truth. Earth was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies. If humanity wanted to survive, it would have to do more than fight. It would have to evolve. 3 days later, the Vengeance arrived in Earth's orbit. Carter stood at the forward observation deck, looking down at the blue marble that was home. It had been years since he'd last set foot on the planet, years since he had felt anything but the cold steel of warships beneath his boots. But there was no time for sentiment. "Admiral," came a voice behind him. "Commander Patel. The Council is demanding an emergency summit. They want to discuss limitations." Carter smirked. Of course they did. The moment humanity proved itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's strongest, the rules suddenly needed to change. "What's the President's stance?" "She's cautious but firm. She wants you there." Carter nodded. "Then let's give the Council something to talk about." The Galactic Council convened in neutral space, a grand station orbiting a dying sun. Carter had been here once before, years ago, back when humanity had still been naive enough to believe in diplomacy. Now, he walked the polished halls with the measured confidence of a man who knew he belonged. Inside the great chamber, the Council members waited. Dozens of species, each seated in their respective sections, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely contained hostility. At the center, on the highest platform, sat Chancellor Velith. "Admiral Carter," Velith greeted, his tone carefully controlled. "Humanity has made quite the impression." Carter took his seat, leaning forward slightly. "You wanted to talk, so talk." A murmur rippled through the chamber at his bluntness, but Velith remained composed. "The Council acknowledges humanity's advancements. However, we must also acknowledge the danger such advancements present. We cannot allow unchecked militarization to disrupt the balance of the galaxy." Carter let out a dry laugh. "Balance? Where was this concern when the Zalari wiped out an entire human colony? Velith's expression didn't change. The Council regrets those events, but retribution cannot be the foundation of diplomacy. Carter's eyes narrowed. Then what can? Velith leaned forward. Cooperation. Humanity must agree to limitations. No further warship production beyond what is necessary for defense. No deployment of singularity-based weapons, and no independent military expansion beyond your system. The chamber fell silent. The Council wasn't offering peace. They were offering containment. Carter looked around the room, meeting the eyes of alien representatives who had once dismissed humanity as irrelevant. Now they were afraid. Good. You want us to stand still while our enemies prepare for round 2, Carter said. That's not happening. Velith's expression darkened. Then humanity will find itself alone, Admiral. Carter stood. We always have been. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Humanity would not be controlled. And if the galaxy wanted war, they would find out just how far Earth was willing to go. Back aboard the Vengeance, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical map hovering before him. The Galactic Council thought they could contain humanity with words, with veiled threats wrapped in diplomacy. But Carter knew better. The Zalari were already regrouping, and the Council's so-called neutrality wouldn't last. Sir, encrypted transmission from UEG Command, Patel reported. Carter nodded. Patch it through. A hologram flickered to life, revealing President Evelyn Marshall. Her sharp green eyes locked onto Carter, her face lined with exhaustion, but her voice carried the weight of a leader who knew the storm was coming. You've made quite the impact, Admiral, she said. They were never going to let us expand, Carter replied. The moment we proved ourselves, the Council started looking for ways to keep us leashed. Marshall exhaled slowly. We have a problem. Intelligence reports that the Zalari are mobilizing. Their losses hit them hard, but they're calling in reinforcements from their outer colonies. The Dominion is preparing for full-scale war. Carter expected as much. The Zalari wouldn't accept defeat. Their pride wouldn't allow it. And now they had a reason to rally their forces, to destroy the upstart species that had humiliated them. We need to strike first, Carter said. Take the fight to them before they're ready. Marshall's gaze sharpened. That's exactly what I was thinking. We can't sit back and wait for the hammer to drop. But this isn't just about the Zalari anymore. The Council is watching, waiting for an excuse to intervene. Carter crossed his arms. Then we give them something they won't expect. Marshall leaned forward. What do you have in mind? Carter turned to Patel. Bring up the Kepler black site. A new hologram appeared, a classified research station orbiting the frozen world of Kepler 62F, deep in human-controlled space. It was one of Earth's most secretive projects, a facility dedicated to developing weapons and technology that even the Council feared. Marshall's eyes narrowed. That project is still experimental, Carter. Are you telling me it's ready? Carter smirked. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be terrifying. 2 weeks later, humanity made its move. A fleet of Earth's most advanced warships, led by the Vengeance, slipped into Zalari-controlled space under the cover of subspace distortion fields. The Zalari had been preparing for an invasion, reinforcing their borders, deploying fleets along expected attack vectors. They never expected humanity to bypass their defenses entirely. The Vengeance emerged from subspace directly over Zalari Prime. Their homeworld. Alarms blared across the planet as defensive batteries powered up, but it was already too late. The moment the Vengeance arrived, the rest of the fleet followed, materializing like specters from the void. The Zalari government had no time to react. Admiral, Enemy fleet mobilizing, Patel reported. Orbital defenses locking onto us. Carter took a slow breath. Deploy the Kepler payload. From the underside of the Vengeance, dozens of sleek black drones detached, each no larger than a human torso. But these weren't ordinary weapons. Kepler 62F had given humanity something new. Adaptive warfare, AI. The drones streaked toward the Zalari fleet, moving faster than any living pilot could react. The moment enemy ships opened fire, the drones learned, adjusting their movements, predicting attack patterns. Within seconds, they were weaving through defenses, slipping past shields, and latching onto hulls. Then, one by one, they began overriding enemy systems. The Zalari fleet turned against itself. Warships fired on one another as their systems were hijacked, their own weapons used against them. The Zalari Prime defense grid shut down entirely, surrendering orbital control to the human fleet. The battle was over before it had even begun. On the surface, the Zalari leaders stood frozen in their great palace, watching in horror as their mighty armada tore itself apart. Then a message came through, a simple transmission from the Vengeance, broadcast to every Zalari channel. Admiral Carter's voice, calm and absolute. This is humanity's response. The war was over, but humanity's rule had just begun. The galaxy trembled. Zalari Prime, once the heart of an empire that had ruled through fear, now lay in silent submission beneath the shadow of the Vengeance. Their fleets were shattered, their defenses turned against them. And worst of all, they hadn't simply been defeated. They had been outclassed. Humanity had done the impossible. In the grand halls of the Zalari High Council, the remaining warlords stood in stunned silence as the human delegation entered. Admiral Carter led the way, his uniform pristine despite the battle, his expression unreadable. Behind him, armored human soldiers flanked the entrance, their presence a reminder that the age of Zalari dominance was over. Lord High Warden Arval, once the most feared warlord in the Dominion, now stood with his claws clenched behind his back, his scaled face twisted in barely concealed rage. "You have won a battle, human," he spat, "but this war is not over." Carter met his glare without flinching. "It is, and you know it." Arval's jaw tightened. His entire species had been raised to believe in their own superiority. The idea that humanity, weak, fragile humanity, had crushed them in open warfare was an insult beyond comprehension. Carter stepped forward. "You have two choices, Arval. Accept the terms and live, or refuse, and watch as we dismantle your empire piece by piece." The warlords exchanged uneasy glances. The Zalari were warriors, conquerors. They did not surrender. But this wasn't surrender. This was survival. Carter gestured toward the display behind him, where live footage showed the remains of the Zalari fleet drifting in the void. "You thought we were weak. You thought we would break. But Earth does not break." He let his words sink in before continuing, his voice calm but unyielding. "From this moment forward, the Zalari Dominion ceases to exist. You will disband your war fleets. You will submit to human oversight, and you will never raise arms against us again." Arval bared his teeth. "And if we refuse?" Carter's expression didn't change. "Then I wipe your homeworld off the map." Silence. He wasn't bluffing. The Zalari had seen what humanity was capable of. They had seen the Kepler drones turn their own fleets against them. They had seen the Odin Protocol erase their mightiest warship from existence. They had seen what happened when Earth was pushed too far. One by one, the warlords lowered their heads. Even Arval, his body trembling with suppressed fury, finally exhaled and bowed. It was done. The Zalari, once one of the most feared empires in the galaxy, had fallen. and humanity had risen in their place. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Cheers erupted in the streets. Humanity had not only avenged its fallen, but had proven that it was no longer a fledgling species struggling to find its place. It had taken its place. In the halls of the United Earth government, President Marshall stood before the gathered leaders of the world, her voice resolute. Today marks the dawn of a new era. No longer are we prey to those who seek to rule us. No longer will humanity be pushed aside, ignored, or contained. We have shown the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated. The chamber erupted in applause. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of its place among the stars. Now it had claimed it, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the distant reaches of space, deep within the Galactic Council's grand citadel, Chancellor Velith watched the reports in silence. Humanity had just rewritten the balance of power. The Council had hoped to contain them. Now they had no choice but to prepare for the inevitable. Because if humanity could bring the Zalari to their knees, then no empire was safe.